Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Comedy Watchers. It's been a while since we've done one of these. Brought to you by the Watchers Digital Network. Obviously, we have a really exciting and fun guest to talk to tonight. And as always, I will let him do some introductions after the intro. It's funny that the one introduction video that we have that doesn't deafen everybody is also kind of the worst one that we have. But
I love
you're-
that.
Just gotta turn the volume up.
I love that there was an applause break. Every comic loves an applause break.
Right, and it was completely real and not edited in any way. That's all of
No.
our adoring fans.
I appreciate you having a live studio audience for this. This is the budget is incredible.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a standard that very few podcasts can live up to. See,
Oh, they're applying. Yeah, give it up for yourselves. Give it up for yourselves, people. They're not a shy crowd. I love that.
Oh, geez, they can't stop.
Now they won't stop. They're all on crack. Stop doing crack, audience.
But joining us tonight, we have Mike Lukas, and from that point, I'll just kind of let you introduce yourself a little bit, give
Sure.
a brief background.
Well, my name is, as you said, Mike Lukas. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, but I've lived in Chicago. Are you a Cleveland guy? Are you a reluctant Browns fan like me? Right? Yeah.
A Bills fan that lives in Cleveland.
Oh, you're a Bills fan that lives in Cleveland. Oh man, you're like persona non gratis.
Yeah.
To everyone.
It's always a bad time though for me. So
it's always a bad time to be a Bills fan. You guys are like so close, and at least with the Browns, we don't even get close. There's not even any hoping.
Right, you get your hopes up, right?
Well, I've lived in New York, and I've lived in New York City. I've lived in Los Angeles, and now I live in Dallas, where I'm co-raising my babies. I am a stand-up comedian who is also an author. I've been on various television shows as a comedian and as an actor, and I have written 6 books. My 6th book is coming out next Friday, a week from today. Well, I don't know if this is going out live or if this is going out whenever it's going out, but it's going out on February 7th. And it is I've written a lot of comedy books, but this particular book that's coming out next Friday is a martial arts vigilante crime thriller. That's right. It's called Spin Kick, The Hiss of Death. So, and there's no irony to that. It's an actual airport book, and it's my 6th book that I've written. So, I guess in all, I'm they call me a fun bunch of guys because I like to personify a lot of different voices and a lot of different. I like to make things come alive. I'll make the table talk, and I'll make your pillow complain.
So I was looking at your Spin Kick book, or a little earlier today, in fact, and I'm glad that you brought it up because I was going to ask kind of the cover, at least the one that you have on the website, kind of reminds me a little bit of The Last Dragon, or
yeah,
kind of, So are we kind of taking some inspiration from that genre, or is this something that you were just kind of having fun with, or do you like that old school like 70s kung fu stuff?
Yeah, I was a big David Carradine fan. I watched Kung Fu religiously, no pun intended, and I also am a big Jack Reacher fan. And so what my goal was to create a combination of those two worlds, where you have this sort of modern vigilante traveling warrior who is sort of in the United States nomadically going from place to place. And there's also his mentor is a guy named Master X, and he's a Vietnamese master who trained his father and then therefore trained him. And throughout the just like in Kung Fu, throughout the book, Master X's philosophies come into his mind, and so we get to learn sort of the way of kicking and punching through this guy's philosophies. And it is based, believe it or not, the story is based loosely on a true story. There was a guy named Vince Champ who was a comedian who was also a serial rapist, and he was arrested and put away for life. And he used to attack these women who were in rehearsal studios, the soundproof rehearsal studios. And so when I heard that story, I was like, oh, that's a great idea for a crime that would be hard to solve, because he basically was doing these in universities that were near the gigs that he was working. And so there was no discernible pattern that he would set up, because he would go to these small sub towns near these bigger towns. So I thought that's an interesting way to sort of combat the authorities with a sickening, crime that this guy was guilty of. And so I sort of created this story based on all of those sort of factors come together. And I'm really happy with how it turned out. I got it back from my editor about 2 weeks ago, and I put the finishing touches on it, and it's ready to go for next Friday. So very excited about that.
So what you're saying is, who needs a weapon when your hands and feet are locked and loaded?
Exactly. Who needs a weapon when your hands are locked and loaded? Always. Yeah, it's fun, and the guy's name, believe it or not, is Ted Roosevelt, no relation. But throughout the book, there's a whole bunch of Theodore Roosevelt references, including one of the big payoffs at the end. And in fact, one of the things he says is, I walk softly and carry a big kick. So there's a little bit of tongue-in-cheek humor within the book, but it's done pretty seriously. So if you're a fan of the genre, you won't be disappointed.
And you can pre-order it on Kindle on Amazon right now.
You can right now, and you can get the paperback as soon as next Friday. So and typically the paperback comes out a couple days before the pre-order is done. So I'm guessing you'll be able to get it on maybe Wednesday or Thursday.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm real excited for it. I've worked on this book for 4 years and just kept working on it, and then putting it aside, and then sort of improving my writing skills and improving sort of the storyline of it, and then going back to it and rewriting it. And there's a real love of it. Like, you have to really fall in love with the plot and with the storyline, and then as you go and do multiple layers and multiple drafts of it, you find different elements of the story that come alive, and that you can begin to call back and weave throughout the whole thing. So there's a real advantage to taking your time with creating a story like this.
Yeah, I do a lot of writing and art in that sense, just to myself. I'm not really published or anything like that. It's something that I've always done though, and for me, I can't ever get past like that first creation phase where I'll be super into something and I'll love it, but I don't know if it's just like a self-hatred or self-loathing kind of thing, but eventually
it's typical, man. Yeah,
I start to turn on it, and I'm like, this is dumb. I don't want to do this. This is stupid. I don't know why I thought this was so good. And I don't know if that's just like me kind of using my my art to tell myself something about myself, or I don't know. But
it's the first draft blues, man. It's funny because we're all like, I'm sure you're if you're a writer, you're also a reader, and if you're a reader, you probably have good taste in who you like to read. And so therefore, when you write, you want to be at the same level as the taste you have for who you're reading. And of course, when you're starting out, there's no way you could ever be at that level. So immediately you're like, this sucks. This is bull. But every first draft does suck. Even Stephen King admits that. He says, the first time he churns it out, it's never the way it ends up. And so you have to get past that. But that's a very typical struggle. A lot of writers struggle with that first draft blues.
Yeah. I don't know. So I don't know if I'll ever actually finish anything, but I have about 600 different, novels that I've started and then never finished.
They're
But
probably all really good ideas too.
I mean, I think they are for about 10 minutes, and then I'm like, you're a fraud, you're a phony, you suck, no one likes you, no one's ever gonna read your stuff. Stop wasting your time.
Right, you start writing every good boy or Jack, whatever Jack Nicholson was writing in The Shining,
Yeah,
over and over and over again.
You have a dumb Pennsylvania accent. No one's gonna want to listen to your audiobook. Like, just give it up.
Just give it up. Give it up now. Give it up by the third paragraph. Yeah, it's a typical thing though, and it's rough to get past that voice. I did something I dubbed the 1,000,000-word challenge in order to get past that. I made myself write 1,000,000 words. I did it by doing 2,000 words a day for like a year and like 7 months, and it forced me to write no matter what was coming out of me and just getting past that. And so it's a very difficult challenge to accomplish because I didn't miss a day, but it was very it took at least like an hour and a half a day in order to do that. But what it did is it got me past that first draft blues where I began to go, you know what, this is all shit, and then I can rewrite it and I can work it into a more feasible draft, 2 or 3 drafts down the line. And what some people say is you just barf out that first draft and then you put it aside for like 2 or 3 months, and then you pull it back out, and then when you look at it, you're looking at it fresh and not as somebody who's still inside of it, and then it helps that too. So who knows, you might look back at your 600 ideas and you might go, holy crap, this one's really good.
Yeah, well, I don't know, we'll see. I as long as I don't take the time to eventually hate it, I love all of my ideas. It's kind of the best way to describe it.
Yeah, I hear you.
I mean, even like podcasting and filmmaking and the stuff that we do for fun is like, it becomes a struggle. Once it becomes work, it's not that it's not fun anymore, but it's like it creates this level of this necessity. Like, this is no longer like, oh yeah, I get to do this. It's like, I guess we're doing this again. So it's just one of those things that I just mentally, I don't know, I'm a 90s kid, I'm a slacker. I grew up thinking that the coolest people in the world when I was in high school was the janitor at our school that had tattoos, and the dude that had the big white rape van that worked at Sam Goody. That's what I aspired for when I was in middle school. That's what you aspired
to was if I could just get a van and some tats, man, I'm rocking the world.
He has both, so
yeah, he's got both now. See, yeah, you've accomplished what you set out to accomplish. Yeah. All the rest is going to be no wonder the rest is downhill for you now.
Yeah, is all of life's goals, all by 37. So it's fantastic.
Wasn't that in the Breakfast Club? The janitor was the cool guy. After all, they were making fun of him, and then it turns out he was the most philosophical of the group.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah. And what's kind of weird about that is like the janitor, we always thought like he was like rocking out to, like, he always had earbuds, like, well, headphones at the time. And we're like, man, that dude's definitely like listened to Slayer and Metallica, and turns out he was like listening to audiobooks because we asked him one day. So
that's funny.
Like an educated guy who went to work and listened to audiobooks.
I'm trying to better myself. Why? What are you doing? We're stealing the Salisbury steak and putting it in someone's shirt.
Yeah. That same day, I probably got detention for, arguing with my physics teacher, or dropping a banana peel and pretending to slip down the stairs or whatever.
Oh my God, that's funny that you argue with your physics teacher. My physics teacher ended up calling my mom at one point, and this is a direct quote. She said, "I'm going to make your son's life the same hell he's made mine." And my mom didn't miss a beat. My mom goes, "Oh my God, good luck. I've been trying since he's been a kid." And she meant it.
Oh no, man, my physics teacher was awful. I hated her. I purposely failed the first, like my first time in physics. Like I went in just with the terrible attitude because of her. And I was like, you know what? If that's how she's going to treat me, I'm going to draw political cartoons on our tests. And that was the
I'll show
extent
her I'll fail. And I'll
right.
come back a whole nother year.
Yeah. Worst of all, our high school had a senior project where you couldn't graduate if you didn't put together this giant portfolio from your entire years of school. And this awful teacher ended up being the person I had to answer to for 4 years for my for my senior project. So that was
hello. How do you do?
Funny thing about Drew is he doesn't let, like, your first impression with Drew is how he sees you the entire rest of your life.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
like if he was annoyed if he's annoyed with you on like day one in class, he'll never let that go. He'll never forgive. That's it.
That you are the annoying person now.
Yeah, you are the most hated teacher.
How I introduced myself in the beginning. If I did like a weird laugh or something, I'm the weird laugh guy.
Yeah, be careful.
Yeah, so far we're good.
Okay, good. Phew.
I would just mute you and then blast you for the next 6 years.
And he will too. He'll talk about you 20 years later on a podcast like he's doing right now.
Like that Mike Lukas guy. Jesus, that guy was annoying. With that face of his.
I hate people with faces.
I hate those faces.
Every one of them. But this kind of went off the rails, but I wanted to kind of like every comedian that we've had on, like I really like to start at your like the beginning of your journey in that world, just because again, and this kind of plays into some of your other books too, because I myself I grew up a fan of comedy. Stand-up comedians are like next level to me. I still am talking about how I met Jim Norton less than a year ago. That was like a really big thing for me and kind of kickstarted us like actually doing stand-up comedy episodes. But I'm very much a fan of that world, and very much like my 600 novels. I do write sets, but 20 minutes into reading them back, I'm like, this is awful. I'm a fraud. Nobody wants to. So, like, how did you get into it? And, eventually, like, you start putting books out, right? For advice for comedians. So, where did it start for you?
Well, it started when I was a baby. I was a funny baby. I was funny. I love to make adults laugh from the time I was a little kid. And then as I was the high school, I was the class clown, and I was also voted most fun to be with. So I always tell people that, because I wasn't just a clown. I was also fun as a clown. And then when I went to college, I went there for management information systems, which is sort of like business and computers. Is that, you too. Yeah. And so, there's not a lot of humor in MIS. It's a pretty cool gig, but it's very much like you're sort of the go-between between the technical world and the business world, and you're supposed to know both languages and be able to communicate.
They gave you a lot of business classes, but there were some coding classes in there too,
right?
Like IT stuff.
Yeah,
and then and now I'm an IT person, so.
Well, I was a minor in computer science, so in computer programming.
Same.
So yeah, right. So they had all that. So I went to University of Dayton. I graduated with honors, and then I worked at AT&T for 2 years after that. And during that time, I was kind of frustrated. I was really wanting to be creative, and I was like, wow, if I'm stuck in this corporate environment forever, I'm kind of screwed. I'm too creative for this. And I was always cracking up my coworkers. In fact, my boss would look out and he would see my cubicle, and there'd be I would be doing my work, and there'd be like 3 or 4 people leaned over my cubicle listening to me go banter, and they'd all be laughing, and then but I'd be getting my work done. He's like, you're getting your work done, but they're not getting their work done. Why are you here? And so I was taking at the time an acting class, and then my mom, who was living in Cleveland, I was in Cincinnati at the time, and my mom was in Cleveland, and she said, hey, did you know that Disney MGM Studios is going around looking for what was it called? Comedic actors. And so she said, that sounds like something that you're looking to do. So I called in sick to my job in Cincinnati. I drove up to Cleveland and I auditioned for Disney MGM Studios. And I got called back for the next day. So I had to call back again from Cleveland. This is before caller ID, and this would be like 1990. And so I was able to call in sick from Cleveland, and I got measured, and I got I did do an additional auditioning for the higher ups the second day, and then I didn't hear anything from them. And then like about 3 months later, I found out I got hired from them. So that's the first job I got, was a corporate entertainment job down in Orlando. So I quit my job at AT&T in Cincinnati, moved all my stuff down to Orlando, got my U-Haul broken into the first day I was there. So that was fun. Was able to convince the insurance company that the stuff I had was way more valuable than it really was. So while I was doing that job at MGM Studios, I was doing Superstar Television, which was a 3-camera shoot where we put people who were in the audience into the show, and it looked like they were on camera, say in an soap opera or on the Tonight Show or the show Cheers. And so I hosted that show, and I also hosted the Star a Day program, where we would interview these B and C celebrities as they would put their hands in a fake cement ceremony, like they did on Hollywood Boulevard. And so during the nighttime, I would do stand-up comedy. And so I would work all day at the studio, and then at night I would drive around Florida, and I would do stand-up comedy gigs until I got good enough to where I quit my day job, so to speak, and began to tour as a comedian. So that's kind of how I started out. I was in Florida, and then I moved up to Chicago. And in Chicago, I fell in love with improv. Well, I was already in love with improv, but I went to the Second City there, which is a famous theater that it's where a lot of the people from Saturday Night Live come from, like Gilda Radner and Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi and Chris Farley and all Tina Fey and Rachel Dratch and all those. And so I studied with them, and then I got hired by them. So I was doing stand-up and I was doing improv at the same time. And at that time, I also got a bunch of TV stuff. So I did The Straight Dope on A&E. I did a season of that, which was a sort of a variety show where we answered questions, crazy questions, and why do people walk on hot coals? And can you really sink in quicksand and stuff like that? And it was sort of like a smart aleck show that I was the host of, and I also co-wrote it. And then I also got some TV spots on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno. I was also on with Conan. I did Conan twice. The first time I did Conan, I played a monk who got his hand deep fried in oil. So Conan was playing Santa Claus, and this little kid was on his lap, and the kid was like, what's the meaning of life? And Santa was like, oh, wow, I can't answer that. But how about if I show you a monk getting his hand deep fried in oil? And the kid's like, okay. And so they cut to me, and I was like, oh, and then they had a fake French fry boiler. So I put my hand in that, and I just went crazy and just was like, ah. So that was my first shot on the Conan show. And then the second time I got to do my stand-up with it. But yeah, so I had a lot of, I went to Las Vegas for a year and worked for Second City there. I was on their main stage for there, and I was my roommate was Jason Sudeikis from Ted Lasso, and this is before he had made it big. And also Kay Cannon, who's she did what's that? She wrote the movie where with the cups where they're singing Perfect Pitch. That was her thing. So those are my two roommates, and so I was there for a year in Vegas, and then I went to LA, and my wife and I, who I'm married to now, we did a radio show for CBS Radio there for several years called Cracking Up with Gretchen and the Lukes, and me being the Lukes, and we kind of ironically named ourselves that, like Dingo and the Baby from Family Guy. And so but our show on CBS Radio, I used a lot of my friends who were actors and improvisers out there, and we took all the weird news and we said, okay, we're going to pretend like my friends are the characters in these weird news articles, and we got them on the show. So we would call up, we would pretend like, we would have them in the studio. And so we'd say like, well, this guy collects squirrels in New Jersey, but we have him on the show. We're going to find out why he does that. We had another another guy that got arrested for cursing during a tornado because the cop happened to be in the other aisle in Walmart. So we had him there, and then we had the two cops. And the cop was, words are weapons, and so that show went on for quite a while, and then that ended when FM Talk ended in 2008. So then I ended up moving to back to Cleveland from LA, and just went back to doing stand-up comedy. And then I took 10 years off to help co-raise my babies. I have two little ones at the time. And I just got tired of coming home and having saying, kids, it's me, daddy. And they're like, remind us. Yeah, you know what I mean? And then so I took 10 years off. And so now in 2014, just last August, is the first time I stepped back on stage again after spending 10 years writing. And in that 10 years, I wrote 3 books on comedy, which is what you're talking about, which is Finding Your Funny Muscle, which is how to create laughs like a pro. And also my second book is Flexing Your Funny Muscle, how to practice creating laughs like a pro. And the third one is Flexing Your Funny Muscle, which is how and when to create laughs like a pro. And all 3 of them, the first one, I say if being funny is like driving, the first book teaches you how to drive. The second book teaches you how to practice driving around town. And the third book teaches you when and when not to drive. So that's basically the story in a nutshell of how I got from there to here. It's kind of an interesting journey to go from, but now I'm back on stage. I'm doing stand-up again. I'm teaching at the Dallas Comedy Club. I teach stand-up there. And I also am on their house improv team, where I do the long form improv for them every week. So it's been quite a fun journey back. They're sort of like my new hometown, my home club here in Dallas.
Yeah, that's kind of a lot to take in.
It sure is.
I was trying to like come up with questions as you were going, but then there's something more interesting. It would pop up with every sentence there. Side note, when you were talking about Second City, one of the people I was going to throw out, who's kind of like a newer famous name, was Jason Sudeikis.
Yeah,
I remember he talked about how he joined Second City when he was on with Mark Maron years ago, and so like he's also Norm from Cheers' nephew.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people don't realize, that he's George Wendt's nephew, and Jason didn't like crawl on Norm's back or anything like that. Jason was very much a go-getter himself, but it sure helped to have someone like George Wendt as your uncle, because he give him a tour of the Saturday Night Live stage before when he was a kid, so he gets to see where he's eventually going to go. So that was, I'm sure, helpful, and it really helped to build his confidence. And Jason didn't lack for confidence at all, and he didn't need to, because he's a great writer. And I'll tell you a quick story about Jason. We were when we first got there, we were getting to know each other, and we started to do this gag where we noticed that on the apartment building that we were staying at, in their main foyer, they had these sheets up that were said, coming this Friday, a finance talk by a local accountant, Kaleidoscope apartment livers only. So only if you could live in the apartment could you come to these things. So Jason noticed these bulletins that were just constantly up there, and he was like, man, I'm going to start making my own. So he goes and he starts typing up. He imitates the exact look of these flyers, so it looks like it's from the Kaleidoscope Apartments, and he says stuff like, ever wanted to be an NBA player, or ever wanted to see if you could go up against an NBA player? Former NBA superstar Magic Johnson come into the Kaleidoscope Apartments to take you on one-on-one. Kaleidoscope apartment dwellers only. And then he would put like one after the other of these ridiculous things like ninja classes this Saturday, Kaleidoscope apartment complex dwellers only. And we would do this. We did it for like at least like a couple of days. And we at 2 a.m, we'd sneak down. We'd put all these things up, and then we would just wait. And then by the next day, they were all taken down. And he kept doing it for like a week and a half, 2 weeks, until finally the apartment manager got a hold of our stage manager and said, "I don't know who's doing this, but you got to tell him to stop." But he was going to Kinko's and getting them Xeroxed so that he would have so many of them to put up. But that's how relentless he was, man. He was hilarious.
Yeah, that's that would have been fun as a roommate. But so, do you think that? So I mean, let me try to phrase this in a way. Is improv kind of your preferred method of comedic delivery, or what is the difference in your opinion between doing improv versus sitting down, writing a set out, and having to like kind of eventually start touring a set and
right. Well, that's the good thing about improv is you take zero preparation to do it. You just show up, and then you just the key to good improv is listening. And you're listening to your partner, and you're heightening what they're saying by yes-anding, which means you agree with what they say, and then you increase it or make it worse one step further. And that's where if you both agree to do that, the scene grows out of that. And with stand-up, you're really you're setting up a premise, first of all, and then you're misdirecting the audience into thinking you're going in a common direction. And then you're surprising them with something that also satisfies that setup, but in a way that they weren't expecting. And so that takes a real mental effort to write that stuff out and to create that. I do both. I like to do a combination of the two. So I like to tell a joke, and then I like to act it out and take the people where the joke was. So, like for instance, I'll say a joke like, if you're single because you have body issues, come on, date a nurse. It's easy to get naked in front of a nurse. They work at a hospital. Like, hey, baby, what do you think? I've seen worse. I know you have my professional sponge bather. And so I'll go from the joke to the actual act out of the two people together. And a lot of that comes out of improvising, and a lot of that comes out of just visualizing where that joke would go. And so my stand-up wouldn't be considered typical or standard or even traditional stand-up. So in that sense, a lot of traditional stand-ups might be aghast and against what I do, because they're like, well, he's making funny faces to get laughs, and that's cheating. But I think that we're sophisticated enough in how we do stand-up that we can agree that there are many roads to St. Louis, as they say, and we can get there in a lot of different ways. And then I think that's better for the audience, because the audience gets to see a variety of different things, not always the same approach to this craft that we're all doing.
And that's not even a good argument anymore, because like people have TikTok accounts where they just make funny faces, and that like gets them millions of views.
Isn't that funny?
Well,
the problem with them is they get those views, they have all those followers, and then they get hired at a comedy club.
Yeah.
And then right, but they can't back it up with 45 minutes of good comedy and
content.
So, and then everybody gets burned.
So I gotta ask, and I'm a vocal supporter of these guys, but Impractical Jokers, right?
I love them.
Okay, good. We're all on the same page here. I mean, like
they're fun, man. They're I mean that it's candid camera. That's all it is.
Right.
I've been to every tour.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got nothing wrong with them, and they're very improvisational, and they're very you know what it reminds me of? It just reminds me of a bunch of fun buddies sitting around busting each other's nuts, and like they're just seeing if they can put each other in the most awkward situations possible.
We've all talked about like 20 years ago, 15 years ago, like Drew and I, we all did this stuff. We just didn't have the cameras,
right? Exactly.
On us, right? Like we all did this kind of goofy shit, right?
Exactly, and that's what you do to your friends. That's comedians' language of love, is ball busting.
Yeah.
The amount of times that we were kicked out of Walmarts because of our behavior, it's like you can't actually put a number on it. Like I've been banned by Walmart and all future Walmarts that may or may not exist.
Be built
on other planets, like on Mars.
The moon and Mars. That I have a piece of paper that says that.
He does.
So, that's funny.
Yeah. So I don't.
Yeah, once you do a couple of pranks in Walmart, it's like you unleash the bear piss that they use to hunters use, and now we're going to ask you not to come return.
Yeah.
But so while you were kind of talking about being that bridge between improv and stand-up, something that I think, for me, I think the real bridge in between there is sketch comedy then too. So like, have you done a lot of sketch work? Was that what the A&E show was that you were talking about?
The A&E show was it was a scripted show that we used a teleprompter, and so it was there were sketches involved in it, but it was all me. We miniaturized me and for a small version of me, and we called the Little Blue Man because I was blue due to the technology at the time. It's the best I can do with the blue screen. And so, but I would talk to myself and do little sketches I'd be in little costumes or like, can man live on bread alone? And I'd pull my jaw down and eat an entire loaf of bread, as that little man. And I would like watch myself do that. And but I did sketch at Second City. The thing about Second City is they use improvisation in order to find their sketches. So they will improvise a scene, an idea that they have, and then they will freeze that once they get the lines that they like, and then they will re-perform it as a sketch. So they use improvisation as a means to get their sketches, whereas theaters like Improv Olympic, or IO as they're called now, or UCB, Upright Citizens Brigade out of New York, or even the Groundlings. Well, I think the Groundlings are more like Second City, where they use sketches to perform. But IO and UCB use improv itself as their performance. So they are under the sort of a Del Close philosophy, which is improv is done well, is entertaining enough to be the performance itself. It's not a means to an end. But in my stand-up, I have a combination of both. I have set material that I use, that I've written, that I can continue to hone and get better. And then in those moments, I allow myself to riff and to improvise so that I can give the audience a very particular show for them that night. It's not a repeated show that I just do over and over again. So it gives them a sort of a feeling, a flavor of, oh, this show's for us.
Yeah, I imagine that technique also prevents you from kind of becoming stagnant and getting bored with your material.
Exactly. Yeah, it really does, because when you allow and that's what I think just improv in general allows you to do, is it keeps things fresh, because and it also allows me to deal with hecklers a lot easier. A lot of comics, their biggest nightmare is if someone dares to heckle them, and to me, I love it. It gives me a chance to work with somebody who's automatically the enemy, according to because the audience is seeing that they're interrupting, and they're interrupting the show that they paid for. So you can really, I don't go tit for tat with a heckler. What I like to do is I like to just yes and whatever they do, and so I'll make them part of the show, so much so that they get uncomfortable. Like I had one show where I walked out, and before I said a word, a guy yells out, "Buff your head for a nickel." and I'm bald, so that was, everybody was like, "Ooh, what's he gonna do?" And so he became the buff your head for a nickel guy. And so throughout the show, I kept calling him back and bringing him back in the show. I said, first of all, I was like, "Oh, you're part of the show now, sir. You're gonna be standing at the entrance way on the way out, shaking everybody's hand." And I had him shaking everyone's hand. I was a buff your head for a nickel guy, and I had him shaking hands and signing women's, body parts, and then I had him driving home with his girlfriend. Remember me? I was part of the show. Buff your head for a nickel. Oh yeah, that was so. And then I have him making out with his girlfriend because he was part of the show, and then they crashed because he was getting pleasured by her. And then I have him. The final piece I do is I had him at work the next day, and I had him mopping the floor at work, going, "I was buff your head for a nickel guy," and then he's in the bathroom mopping the floor of the bathroom, and so that he's knocking on the door of the stall saying, "You should have heard me last night at the comedy club. I was in the show." And by that time, everybody's kind of like, "Woo," and the guy's kind of like, "Ah, forget it. Stop talking about me." So it's a different way to handle moments that are live, that are fresh and with the crowd.
Yeah, I've only ever seen. I was at the show that I had met Norton at. Like, there was one particular couple that, again, they weren't even like kind of heckling out of being assholes, but they were just kind of drunk and stupid.
Right.
Didn't
Most
know any
people are
better.
like that. Yeah, most people aren't being mean.
Yeah, and he eventually got annoyed with them, but even he was like almost gentle and turned it into like a callback thing. And it was kind of that was a sight to see, because growing up,
Yeah.
listening to Norton and the Tough Crowd crew, like that's kind of, I was like, oh man, he's gonna destroy these two. And it just kind of,
Well, as he gets older, he's getting a little bit, like he's sweet and sour, like but I wouldn't mess with him. I definitely would. Like Norton is he's a sharp cookie, man. That dude is very funny. Yeah, I've always been a big fan of his. I met him at the Chicago Comedy Festival a long time ago. I believe is where I met him.
Hey, speaking of festivals, did you say that you did Montreal?
Yeah, I was in the New Faces in Montreal. That was
awesome.
quite an experience. That was how I ended up getting one of the Conan spots. But yeah, it was quite an experience. I had to audition I think 3 different times to get that one, 3 different years. And then finally my manager at the time was he knew a bunch of people up there, so he was able to get them to watch me at the Hollywood Improv. And I was lucky enough, Drew Carey was there with his entourage to do a version of Whose Line Is It Anyways? And he was going to do that at 10 o'clock. And my set was at 9:55. So everybody was packed in there to see Drew. And then I got up there and I got to do my set right before they got to see the thing they wanted to see. And they were still in the mood to see comedy. So I just smoked it. And so then I ended up getting the festival off of that set.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. I know that that's
awesome,
kind
man.
of like a very revered festival to work at. So
it was crazy. It was cool. Like all sorts of managers and bookers and club owners, and yeah, it was quite a and just a ton of really great comics were there too. It's quite a privilege to be asked to do that for sure.
Well, when you were describing that, it kind of made me wonder. So you're going up at 9:55, and then they have Drew going on at 10. What's the the biggest act that has ever kind of bumped you from stage? Did that ever happen to you?
Let's see. Yeah, I would say probably. Well, actually, this guy was really cool, Dave Chappelle. I was working in Dayton at the Wiley's Comedy Club, and Dave Chappelle lives in Dayton. He lives right outside of. He lives in Southern Ohio. I think he's got a farmhouse there or something. And so he would come into this club and just get up and do sets. But to Dave's credit, I was headlining the show. and he said, "Can I go up?" And instead of going up before me, he went up after me. So I went up and did 35, 40 minutes. I cut mine short so that they could see him. And then he went up after me. So he could have very easily gone up before me and then made it very difficult for me to earn my money. But like Dave Chappelle goes up there for 40 minutes. Okay, now please welcome Mike Lukas. Ah, boo. We just saw what we came to see, So they ended up seeing my show and they really enjoyed my show. And then they were like, "Hey, are you ready for some more comedy? We have a special guest." And they brought out Dave Chappelle and they went apeshit. They just loved it. And he killed. And he that's how cool he is, though, in the world of comedy. He knew that it would be disrespectful to try to, to bump somebody who's already on the show.
Yeah, that's definitely really cool. He's known for that too. That's not the first time I've heard a story like that where Chappelle waited it out. Man,
he's like I'd say he's one of the best in the business right now. He's like a godfather in the observational comedy world.
Yeah, he's definitely like stuck to. What I really appreciate is how much like he'll stick to his guns on stuff, and he hasn't buckled to the cancel culture that existed there for a while. And
they were coming after him pretty hard.
Yeah.
Last
couple years ago, they went real hard after him.
Yeah.
To their credit,
and I
Netflix
think he enjoyed that. I think he enjoyed it. I think
he did too.
Right?
They dug up old tweets off Twitter and stuff, and he was restating the things that he said on Twitter. He's like, "Yeah, I said that. I'll say it again."
Yeah, I'm a comedian. I say jokes. I make fun of everybody.
Yeah. I think I just brain farted.
Oh yeah.
Yep. You saw it. You saw it right there.
Live.
I brain farted once. I was on a audition. This is like kind of early on in my career. It was MTV used to do their half-hour comedy hour, and so they were down in Florida. Remember they do the spring break specials, and right. And so this was like probably in 1991, maybe. And so they were down in Tampa looking for comedians to do their Daytona show. So they auditioned probably about 40 of us, right? So I go up there and I'm probably whatever comic number 28, so but it's a great crowd. They're awesome. So I go up and I do my first bit, which is about I did a bit about this guy who got his head cut off on Space Mountain. There's a guy that in real life got his head cut off on Space Mountain. And I was like, how do you lose your head on a roller coaster ride? Woohoo! No hands, no head. And then I had him do this whole bit about how he the guy behind him caught the head and he was doing using it like a puppet and singing, who's the leader of the club that's made for you and me? MISSINGHEAD, missing head. He didn't duck, missing head. He didn't duck. Forever let us hold our head up high. And then so I had this whole thing and it killed. It just absolutely killed. And I was just like, whoa, that went way better than I thought it would. And then I just blanked. I just brain farted. And I just sat there and I was like, and then it clicked in what I wanted to do. But there was no way they were going to hire me to be on TV if I couldn't even do the audition without brain farting. So I know the feeling, man. Your brain just goes, duh.
Yeah. I think I don't know if that was around the same time that Jim Breuer was doing his show, but you just kind of reminded me of watching Jim Breuer on MTV during those.
Oh, remember those? Yeah.
Yeah. And Bobby Kelly. I know Bobby Kelly had a disastrous a set in that same era. I don't know if it would have been 91 or not, but I was just on a YouTube just kind of watching all of these really bad sets from eventually great comedians. And that was
great?
one of
Oh, every single comic is bombed. Every comic that has been out there that has killer sets. Mitch Hedberg used to bomb. I mean, Mitch Hedberg, the most brilliant comedian you could argue,
Was
who ever
awful.
lived, is
Awful.
used to eat a big one all the time because some people just didn't dig and didn't get what he was doing. It's
Yeah.
like, how could you
Yeah.
not get that?
It's like watching your favorite band in a basement and then like them becoming popular like 10 years later, like on the radio, right?
Right. And you watch them play the acoustic version of their hits like way back when, and you're like, wow, they knew even back then.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe Comedy Central actually dubbed laughter into Hedberg's uh, special that he did. I remember
Oh,
hearing about
really?
that. Like
I believe
his,
that. It's called we sweetened it.
yeah, like his he bombed on his special on Comedy Central too, and that's the thing that eventually like kind of set him off into his very unfortunately brief kind of
Yeah.
superstardom there for a couple of years before he died. And it's like super ironic that it was, just a TV production sweetening it up was all that was needed for people to start laughing at his stuff. But
Right. To
yeah,
just identify his talent.
Hedberg was great. That was at an age where I was really starting to fall in love with stand up. And
Yeah.
so Hedberg was definitely one of my guys. I had all of his albums. And then, I mean, my generation kind of turned on him, but Dane Cook, right around that same time, I think was doing a lot of really good stuff. And certainly like bringing comedy into like the modern world. Dane Cook was kind of like that first. We made fun of the TikTok guys earlier, but Dane Cook in MySpace, man, he kind of really
Yeah.
changed comedy. He
I mean,
was the first guy
Dane
to do
Cook's
that.
like he's the Nickelback of comedy, right?
Yeah, and I know a few years back somebody had alluded to Amy Schumer also, but I believe that was
Yeah.
kind of debunked.
Yeah. The problem is with comedy is there's a lot of like they call it like simultaneous invention, and you come up
Yeah.
with these ideas, and like in my book, I teach about these humor heightening devices, and it's the ways that comics use to get laughs. It's things like you cut forward to, like, so you say like, you tell a joke and you cut forward to a moment in time that's in the future that sort of happens because the joke happened, or you cut back to a moment in time that existed before the joke existed. So you might cut back to when the marketing team came up with the idea or whatever. There's things like contrast where you go, oh, well, they do it this way in LA, but they do it this way in Cleveland. And there's just different devices that you can use to get your laughs. And so some people will, because they're using the same kind of devices and they're using the same topics and the same premises, and, they don't really have their own comedy brand per se. A lot of overlapping happens. And so I'll say that a lot of times it's not done viciously, it's not done purposely. It just, like, then there's people like Robin Williams who used to steal famously. And it was because he was, coked up and he was, his brain was moving fast, but he would be accountable for it. He would pay people afterwards and go, sorry about that. Here's $50 or whatever. Here's $100.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know about humor.
Amy Schumer's whole stick is that she's fat and ugly, and I'm like, so am I. So
right,
so
everyone could.
Who's stealing from
that.
who?
Yeah. Right, who's stealing from who? Exactly. all her beard jokes are definitely stolen from you.
But so we are actually hitting our time. We usually keep this at about an hour.
Oh, great.
So we're at 58 minutes. And I want to make sure, because this will go out tomorrow. We typically don't do lives this late at night because it's kind of a dead time slot. Nobody ever watches them. We have like 3 people that will hang out with us. So this will go up tomorrow. So if you have anything other than your book that you said is coming out next Friday, now's a good time. You can go ahead and promote.
Give us the links, everything.
Yeah, I love to promote my I have 2 websites, funnymuscle.com, and that's where I sell my books from, and where I have a lot of free blogs for my writing that is on there, and I have a lot of videos, and you can listen to my stand up on there. And also at mike-lukas.com. It's Lukas, mike-lukas.com. That's where I keep a lot of my blogs and all my other books that are not Funny Muscle. So I've got 6 books. I got the 3 Funny Muscle books. I've got the one that's coming out next Friday, The Spin Kick. I've also got a book called My Daily Joy Strategy. It's a self-help book that talks about prioritizing joy in your daily life. It's a fun book. It's a Cranky Comics game plan for prioritizing your daily joy. And then I've also got a collection of short stories called Frog Belly Beans, and they're 14 twisted short stories that are awesome. I'm really proud of that book, and they're all available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And most of them have an audio version on them. So any of that, if anybody wants to check those out, I'd really appreciate it. And always leave a review. If you dig the books, leave a review. Boy, that sure does help train the algorithm.
Absolutely.
We are still trying to train that algorithm ourselves.
Voiceover not done by Dane Cook, though, by the way.
There we go. So yeah, hey, thank you for joining us. Definitely, everybody, check out those links. This was a fun chat. We're gonna go ahead. We're gonna hit the outro. It's 26 seconds, and it might be a little louder than the intro was. Just warn you on your ears right there. And we will see everybody next time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
The preceding program has been brought to you by the Watchers Podcast Network. If you enjoyed the show, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends to help grow our network. Check us out on all social media platforms, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, thanks for your support.